Okay, everybody, thank you for coming to Navigating and Being Bi Plus and Trans within the religious context. This workshop will navigate religious contexts, especially those that have often attempted to negate our ingrained gender as sexuality. We will take a trans-affirming look at making space in religious communities accessible to all of us. As activists, theologians, rabbis, clerics, practitioners, we all must do the work to queer religion. My name is Martin Rawlings-Fein. I have a master's in Jewish studies from the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, and I'm one of the ones actually who did concurrent sexuality and gender coursework. I'll tell you about that. That was really fun to do. Some disclosures. I'm a bisexual trans man. I'm a Jew by choice. I'm a childhood stroke survivor. Neurodivergent. My brain works a little differently than others. I am a first-generation college graduate and the first person in my family to earn a graduate degree. Presented this topic previously for the University of San Francisco, the Queering Religion course, and other queer university classes. Sometimes explaining Jewish things to non-Jewish people, sometimes explaining trans things to non-trans people. I have no financial disclosures. While I am a member of Shar Zahav, and this is sponsored by Shar Zahav. Hello. So some definitions, just in case, we don't have all the knowledge base here. I like to think about the mikveh as the original baptism. The mikveh is used to bring someone into Judaism officially, and for them and others to maintain ritual purity. Some people go after the menses or before marriage rituals, or because of special occurrences or big events to make fresh starts. Our SF, our San Francisco mikveh, is very queer friendly, and they try to balance the needs of the entire Jewish community. And people have used the mikveh as a transition tool as well, which is really exciting. The Brit Milah, or the circumcision, whether you agree or disagree with this practice, is one of the most ancient Jewish markers. The Hatafat Brit, single drop of blood. This is also sometimes used for conversion of people who are masculine or trans who present as male and cannot have a circumcision for whatever reason. Trans men often opt for this as a conversion marker. And the next three are very broad terms, which have varied meanings. And they change over time in historical context and all of that. Gender, it's between the ears. It's how you feel about yourself. Kids can develop a sense of gender identity by the time they're 2 or 3. For most people, birth, sex, and gender identity match. They're called cis people, cisgender people. It's a chemistry term for on the side of, relating to the gender at birth. So cis, trans. It's a lovely sort of dynamic there. A binary. Sexuality. Sexuality is the way we experience ourselves. Sexually, this involves biological, erotic, physical, emotional, social, or spiritual feelings and behaviors. Now, spiritual feelings and behaviors come from my teacher, Rabbi Devora, who uses the pronouns they, them. And they actually taught that sexuality can include spiritual feelings and behaviors. They have had experiences where choral music can be arousing emotionally to them. So that's that. And then religion, seeking connection with the divine source. So my teacher, Rabbi Marcia Prager, taught us about seeking the connection with the divine source. She once said that it was the simplest definition that she could come up with, and it mirrored her definition of spirituality because she doesn't see the line dividing the two. And I really want to bring you here to Poll Everywhere to ask you, how would you describe religion? Let's have you sign into polleverywhere.com and enter Martin Rawlin 327 and respond to the activity, or you can join by text. You can text Martin Rawlin 327 to 37607, and it'll allow you to text your message. Let's see, we can get there. And I'll wait because we have 0 results right now, but how would you describe religion? Do you think it's seeking the source, or do you think it's something completely different? Is it a binary of secular versus religion? I'll give you a few minutes to answer the question. And do this. Okay. Seeking the way, seeking truth, spiritual. Okay. You like Rabbi Prager, see spiritual and religious as one and the same thing without that dividing there. The way, understanding. So I love this. Earthly. It can be an identity. That's definitely true. You're going to keep this up because we're going to have several other questions, about 4 other questions throughout this. And comforting. A practice. Okay. Community. I like that. I love to see different answers from people because this is beautiful. This word art here. Meaning, understanding, relationship. It's definitely relational. It's relational about how we are relational to God, how God is relational to us. Seeking. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. Yes. Yes, got some great answers here. This is wonderful. Okay, we're going to move on to the next slide. The intersections of religion, sexuality, gender, sexuality, and religion. As a religion, I've often seen Judaism as gendered. Probably not in the way that most people think about the gender nature of Hebrew, but it's gendered from a religious garb perspective. So who wears the kippah or the talit or the tefillin, or I've known some trans women who come from more conservative backgrounds who take a long time to embrace wearing a talisim again, or won't wear tefillin, but do wear tikkels or modest head coverings. All these things cannot be teased apart. My religion and my sexuality and my gender are not things I can take off. I can't just, oh, here I'm going to take off my religion for a day because I live it. It's who I am. I can't take off my sexuality because it's who I am as well. And gender, we have, the ability to change gender over time. We'll talk about that a little later, but it is so difficult to take off all of these parts of yourself and only engage with one. So I think it's a really interesting way to look at how they're all interconnected. So I'm going to tell you about my story. So my story starts, I grew up in San Jose and all over the SF Bay area. Sometimes I refer to San Jose as my own personal Mitzrayim, or that narrow place that we call Egypt and the Passover Seder. I moved to San Francisco, the queer capital of the world, over 20 years ago in 1998. And my dad was born in a Jewish family. I say Jewish family in the Midwest because he became a Southern Baptist minister. Yay. Sometimes my dad is a Mizrahi extraction, and my mom is still Christian. My dad is still a seeker, and they are both divorced from each other. My mom lives in Oregon with her stepdad. Well, my stepdad, sorry, Don, and my dad lives in Santa Clara. And the last I checked, he was a Qigong practitioner. He teaches a course in miracles. he did come to my daughter's bat mitzvah. That's him there with her, where she led the prayer service and blessed and read the Torah. And our synagogue now has new wording. We call it a bar mitzvah, which is the gender neutral aspect instead of b'nai mitzvah. So my mother sent me to multiple high schools. One was a Christian Southern Baptist one, where I was not allowed to wear pants. And that's me with my friend Alicia. I began identifying as Jewish of patrilineal descent at 15 years old. And my mother sent me to all these schools, but I finally got to this alternative high school because of my cross-gender behavior and bisexuality. And when I was there, I actually got to have mainstream classes, but I had group therapy and one-on-one therapy to help support me. And it was my first gay therapist was in high school. And I came out. I started my transition from female to male during my senior year at 17. I was able to actually get to what I wanted out of life. This is 1995. So it took me a really long time to find a spiritual home that accepted me as a trans man, as a bisexual, and as a Jew. My exploration has taken me to Orthodox, conservative, reform, and renewal communities in the East Bay, in San Francisco, and South Bay, and none fit me as well as Shar Zahab did. And the same rabbi that officiated at my conversion ritual when I was 26 also officiated at my wedding, same year. In fact, I think it was the same week. During my exploration of Judaism, I had a rabbi ask me if it wouldn't be easier if I detransitioned before becoming Jewish, and that was very harsh. I felt like I have friends who had that kind of question asked of them when they were applying to the police academy and things like that, and there was this dread and feeling in me at that time that if he can't accept me, who will be able to accept me as my full self? Well, Shar Zahab did, and they really, I call them reformadox, because there are so many streams within Judaism within Shar Zahab that we have members from all sorts of Jewish backgrounds. So my wife there actually, my wife and I are both bisexual. We met at Congregation Shar Zahab. We are still bisexual because we utilize Robin Oak's definition of bisexuality, or the potential to be attracted intimately, romantically, and or sexually to people of more than one gender, not necessarily at the same time or in the same way or the same degree. And so we're still bisexual. And yes, this little baby is now 15, almost 16. And that's my personal story. Now, I want to ask you a question. Same place, samepoleverywhere.com. What does queering religion mean to you? How do we queer religion? I want to kind of get a baseline for finding out, like, how do you think we can queer religion and make holiness or kadosh, this idea that of holiness, how do we bring that to being queer? So give you a few minutes to figure that out and feel out that question. What does queering religion mean? And it can be a word or a phrase or a way that you are feeling right now about it. How does queering religion, what does it mean? How can we do that? And the looks like Sarah got to this before I did. The polleverywhere.com link. You can join by the web. Here we go. So normalizing. It normalizes us, right? We're just regular everyday congregants. Why would we need anything else? Just be normal. Perspectives, okay. Practices. If you go to Ritualwell and you look up transgender, you find a ton of really well thought out blessings and rituals to transition by or to change your name. Radical, I like that, radical. Existence. It's just we're just us. That's it. Experiences through people's experiences of us can help out so much. Flexibility, teaching flexibility within religion. It is something that we need to strive for. Acceptance, education, inclusion, all really good answers. So I'm going to go into something like, why did I choose Judaism? Looking beyond sexuality and gender, I found the welcoming synagogues that cared more about my dignity and respect, my kavod habayota than sin or chet. This idea that, you know, because sin isn't the same as in the Jewish faith as it is in Christianity. Judaism teaches that human beings are not basically sinful, whereas many Christian faiths, my own when I was younger, believe that one is born with the sin inside of them. And so it can be not all, but some. And we as Jews come into a world now they're carrying the burden of sin. And rather, it's just a result of our human inclinations, right? So we keep missing the mark. And we must properly channel like the human inclination, the yetzer, it's either yetzer ra or yetzer tov, the bad inclination or the good inclination. And some of the really lovely organizations that deal with this in religious community, I'm going to highlight one. So Welcoming Souls Project by Michal. And I think that, you know, they have their principles of inclusion. I just paraphrase some of them below. It's all human beings are created in the image of God, but B'Tselem Elohim. That's a theme that we've been hearing today from many of the lectures. Orientation cannot be changed with therapy. That is a very good one. And to acknowledge that LGBTQ Jews live in the Orthodox community confronted by serious emotional, communal, and psychological challenges that cause them and their families great pain and suffering. It's a big part of helping us be part of community is acknowledgement. And Jews struggling to live in accordance with halakhic values need and deserve support. It's a very big one. LGBTQ Jews should be welcome as full members of synagogues and school communities. I was actually the head teacher and the education director at Shar Zahav for a while we were looking for a permanent placement. And you know, it is something that needs to be talked about. Our school communities need to be accessible for trans folks, especially trans kids. And celibacy is not an option. The Orthodox world is challenging to find a way within halakhic parameters to welcome these Jews and help their partners and children. Now, that's not the only group that helps people, but this is one of the more prominent ones that I actually think is wonderful. This idea that Welcoming Souls, there's 140 Orthodox synagogues across North America that are willing to engage in these dialogues with the organization itself and bring this inclusive work forward. Now, I want to share with you the, I'm gonna put this in the chat here, because there is I'm gonna change it from Babette to everyone in meeting. The Welcoming Souls Project, I put that in the chat for you so you can also take a look at it. They also have a warm line, which is great. So another thing is that people were sharing these stories. Stories are a big part of why Judaism is so lovely. The idea that poor Jonathan and David, there was a story of Ruth, Naomi, and Boaz. You know, the idea that where you will go, I will go, and wherever you live, I will live, your people will be my people, and your God my God. That is amazing. There are no weddings like we think of weddings in the Bible. So the same-sex vows between Ruth and Naomi and David and Jonathan provide the best biblical models for wedding vows across sexualities. Ruth chooses her bond of kinship in a way that is both heartening and humbling. She's coming from the shared space of loss, her own husband and Naomi's husband, who are both dead, and Jewish bisexuals and lesbians seeking out to ground their experiences in this textual framework have used the story of Ruth and Naomi to inspire liturgical works, rituals, and ceremonies. And part of the story resonates is that with bisexual and lesbian women is this close voluntary kinship ties that Ruth declares for Naomi. And disregarding the biological kinship for a chosen dynamic, it brings us so close to home. And if a man or a woman were to say these things together, they'd be married. So throughout the story, their connections are various, and men do hold space in the narrative, but they use these relationships with these men to forward themselves to their family bond. It's one deep caring. Ruth gives up her home and her people, and Naomi takes this young widow on a journey to Bethlehem and becomes her mentor in various ways. And a bisexual reading takes us in directions of horizontal and vertical, the love between Naomi and Ruth and also Boaz, because the kinsman related to Naomi's husband is measured against the love between two women in the story. It's not dissimilar to the story, any other story that talk like David and Jonathan and Michal. These are all very, very linked stories. And I love that about Judaism, that you can have all of these stories and they're linked together. And David and Jonathan also vow. They also vow together. Let's go this. David meets Jonathan and their souls are knit, and Jonathan stripped himself of his robe that was upon him and gave it to David and his apparel, even to his sword and his bow and his girdle. You know, King David is seen as a very willing sexual partner to multiple women in the Ark, and also his love for Jonathan was more than that of a woman. David and Jonathan exchanged vows. They exchanged, their vows of the Lord will be between you and me, and between me, my descendants, and your descendants forever. And Ruth was even David's grandmother, which further connects the stories. David is presented in the story as a compelling young man. Everyone loves him. Saul, Michal, Jonathan, they all love him really deeply. And David's appealing as a poet, a musician, a warrior, a lover, but none of these is in a purely usual sense. David's unique. David is queer. David is very exciting to people. And people read this as a homosocial narrative, an intense platonic friendship, but no more. This homosocial and monosexual narrative is really patently untrue, and we have the receipts of their love in the text itself. These stories of people being themselves, which are celebrated, are what really drew me into Judaism and away from the religion of my faith, religion of my birth. But it's really interesting how we can have all these stories in the Tanakh that are affirming. And, sexuality doesn't have to be sexual. Ways that we experience and express ourselves, not just about the marriage bedroom. The last graduate course I took before earning my MA-JS, my master's in Jewish studies, was called Women, Gender, Judaism, and Islam. And one of the speakers, an imam, said the sexuality was something that happened only in the married couple's bedroom. It was like people only discover sexuality through having sex, which is untrue. And we can have sexuality without even being in a relationship. Not just about the marriage bedroom. We can't take off our sexuality like a worn coat. It's not. It's possible to do. Is it possible to be bisexual without sex as a motivator? Yes. It is possible to be bisexual and pansexual and queer all at once because co-identities are common. There's a multiplicity of identity. Identity is a journey. We travel through life becoming and discovering ourselves. And labels should not be boxes into which we feel we must squeeze ourselves, but rather tools with which to communicate and begin conversations. And Robin Oakes is an educator, speaker, and grassroots activist, and editor of Bi Women Quarterly, and 2 anthologies, the 42 country collection Getting Bi, Voices of Bisexuals Around the World, and Recognize the Voices of Bisexual Men. She deals in transgressing the binary. So I really like this idea of a bisexual reading of the Bible. There are stories in the text about sex and desire that are not about the gender of the person or persons involved. These stories open a door into the non-binary space. I think that by creating this sort of binary sexuality, the homo-hetero didactic pairing, we miss half the story. The genderless masculine and feminine God, the masculine and feminine Israelites, mother, father, husband, wife in the text. And through bisexual readings, we explore this liminality, this flexible liminality within the text, whether the text silences or indeterminacies help or hinder a bisexual reading, and whether David ever returns the love that he received from all these people. And the character of David maneuvered through the literary world as a bisexual man. Bisexual desires, and in the end we see David written as a bisexual, and Ruth and Naomi in the same kind of way. We have this forming a familial bond during a difficult time in their lives, and they use heteronormative marriage to elevate their situation. In essence, they create a bisexual family, and David mirrors and inverts that by not loving anybody. And we know that Naomi is loved by Ruth in the sort of the same way that Jonathan is loved by David, or that David is loved by Jonathan. So there's also this idea that we have these liminal bi plus characters in the text, which is really exciting to see. There are numerous additional biblical texts that would benefit from readings of this model of bisexual theory, including bisexual readings of the feminine and masculine God. The further bisexual reading of the David story could also be applied to David's relationship with the masculine and feminine aspects of the divine, as portrayed in his frenzied dancing that accompanied the ark to Jerusalem. This is not to say that the readings are forever changed, but if we have these ways of reading this text, then we, I gotta go back here because I don't want to lose my, if we have these ways to read the text that brings all these things to the forefront, why shouldn't we use it? And we'll have a new way to look at these sacred texts. There's actually a really interesting thing about Jonathan's abdication as a gender transition rather than, and we've got a chat here. Hold on a second. Let's see. Yes. What about a queer reading of the Tanakh from the lens of consensual non-monogamy? Exactly, Baya, exactly. These are ways that we can read the Torah that are maybe not for everybody, but it brings the ability to find ourselves in the text, which is awesome. Let's see. So the Bible, that is not mine. Actually, there is a book called The Bible with the bi that is. It's like a bi Bible. It's very interesting. So the bi plus and trans umbrellas. So we have these two ideas, these umbrellas. Bi plus is more of all of these things: the bisexual, polysexual, queer, panromantic, homoflexible, bi-curious, pansexual, biromantic, fluid, heteroflexible, non-monosexual, and bifurious. And then we have the trans umbrella, which is kind of like, has a non-binary and a binary aspect, gender fluid and gender queer, demi-boy, bi-gender, and more. And there's so many people in our Jewish framework who identified as bisexual, from Brenda Howard, the mother of Pride, for her grassroots involvement with first Pride marches. And she also co-founded the New York area bisexual network in your neck of the woods, and which, and also Leonard Bernstein, the composer of West Side Story, Ezra Miller, The Flash, and Sherry Eisner, who wrote Notes for a Bisexual Revolution. And they all kind of dispel these common misconceptions about bisexual people. They're promiscuous or prone to cheating or cannot choose a side, these kind of things. These are just regular people, like we said earlier, normal. One of the things about Judaism is the diversity of ideas, promotion of a healthy debate. And sexuality is the same way for me. There are so many complexities to wade through, that questions to be asked, answers that are different and all correct. The International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia came up with this great little thing about 50% of people within the LGBT plus community are bisexual. So, you know, we have the invisible majority excluded, we have them marginalized, and they face negative stereotypes. We face negative stereotypes. It's only a phase. She doesn't know what she wants, those kind of things. Are you now gay? And bisexual exclusion in LGBT events that are just geared towards gay and lesbian communities, and negative stereotypes. Or so you're bisexual. Those kind of negative stereotypes about, you know, you want your cake and eat too. So these ideas are actually things that maybe kind of want to say, you know, I'm bisexual and a trans man. But I'd like to know how you identify, and I'm going to share. Let's see. So let's get that link back in the chat. Maybe we can pull that back in there. And the link is Poll Everywhere, pollev.com, and Martin Rawlings-Fein. There we go. Thank you, Babette. And there's a smattering, just a smattering. As you can see, we've got, you know, quite a few people here in this space. Let's see. I love watching these numbers change and move around. It's pretty awesome. All these different people. I'm so happy to see so many queer people here today. Awesome. We have more lesbians now. But you see that, you know, these things, you know, how we identify as these things change over time. And when I was coming out, I identified as queer, and then identified as bi. So how we come out, how we maneuver the systems, how we find out, how we deal with all of this is really about personal comfort level. And this is a great how to identify slide. Now, there are also tropes in the Bible that talk about things that we still talk about today. We see bi tropes. we see the depraved bisexual. Sodom and Gomorrah, Gibeah. Gibeah is also, it's along the same lines of strangers coming to town. And we also find homosexual reproduction, which is the idea that David and Jonathan just got married to have children, or Ruth and Naomi got married to have children. Yeah, I was thinking about that, how not having straight as an option. I thought I'd have it here in this space at least, but you are correct. I'm sorry about that. I should have had that as one of the options. So polyamory, David, Jonathan, Michal, Ruth, Naomi, Boaz. This is an idea that we can see sort of these tropes in the text. The teamwork seduction, Lot's daughters, Ruth and Naomi. Lot's daughters, after they escape Sodom and they go to the caves of Zoar and they exist as hermits, they don't know that the world is not dead around them. And they try to seduce their father to have children. So these ideas that, or Ruth and Naomi, Naomi tells Ruth exactly how to get to Boaz. So these ideas are still around, and they've been around for a long time. And the idea that everyone is bi comes in rabbinic literature. In the Babylonian Talmud, Sanhedrin 54b, we have wrestling with gods and men, homosexuality and Jewish tradition. Rabbi Greenberg posited that in that section, Ar Yehuda pushes the narrative that it's possible that motivation of men to have their sexual relations met with other men rather than with women turns less inherently to bisexuality for most men, but more than an enormous investment in the sex with women entails. Basically, all men are bisexual, although Rabbi Greenberg did not think that. He thought that it was just the amount of time you had to actually build up that trust. And then we have genders within Judaism, which I love. I love this. It's like a trans clergy Zoom call right here. My Rabbi Zellman, Rabbi Kapoor Matter, and Lefrani, and Rabbi Kukla. These are all really wonderful people, and they are. We're with the different genders, Zakar and Nekava, androgynous, Tumtum, Alionit, Saris, all of these things. All of these genders have been discussed for thousands of years. And that's really exciting to me, to think that a religion can actually have all that wonderful, wonderful discussion in it. These are, you know, from the first century on, people were talking about this, which is talking about what it is, what's happening on the ground, rather than deal with this as a, they were cataloging, trying to figure out how God did not make mistakes, but this is how life is. Life will find a way. So I want to kind of go into, where do we see these three things change in our lives? The religion, the sexuality, and the gender, and how do we see them change in our lives? It can be a word, it can be a phrase. Just let's take a look and see if anybody has any of these ideas. And thank you for using poll everywhere, because I didn't know how this would go today, but it's been some great answers in today's chat. The Babette has put the link in the chat again. Okay, with maturity, okay. Refinement, refining who we are. I like that. With openness. Depth and nuance. I like that one too. Anytime, really, anytime we do anything, those things will touch each other. I like that. So it's a good one. I also think that with depth and nuance, it can be really anytime that we maneuver into the world, these three things will touch in our lives, whether we go to the supermarket or the shul. And I think that we've got this religion, sexuality, and gender, they all come together in making a whole person. Now, we've got about 5 minutes left until the end of this call. You'll notice that some of these people making space for all. So many people you've seen today, or you saw them last year. We came to this lovely thing. Activists. How do the activists, you may notice some of these people, how do we make space for all of our religious communities? How do we make space? We push from the outside and the inside, and it builds a better community. We've got all of these wonderful things that activists do. Theologians, theology mediates between faith and culture. At the Vatican II, use a Catholic reference again, all the theological experts were male clerics. By contrast, when the church convenes its next ecumenical council, a majority of these theological experts will likely be lay theologians, and a large number will be women. It's a change of culture. Similarly, when trans folks in rabbinical school in 2000 was unheard of, but in 2013, there were at least 6 rabbis. And by 2021, there'll be more trans rabbis that I can count on both my hands. It's very exciting. And practitioners can change things from inside. I'm a practitioner, as are you, and we all are, even the rabbis among us and the cantors. We can all be lay leaders, Jews in the pews and activists from within of our synagogues. And rabbis set the tone for everything in a Jewish community, unless you're my Jewish community, which a lot of the lay people set the tone, but rabbis can set the tone for making places welcoming to everybody. And here we go with, this is the next one. We have about 5 minutes to wrap this up. I'm sure Babette will let us know what's going to happen. And I think you can open it up to questions now. And I will stop my share so we can actually have a discussion. And everybody can unmute themselves if they would like to speak. Sarah?
I think that just this interesting nature of at least a lot of the spaces I've spent as a bi individual. There's also been a lot of non-binary individuals in those spaces. I think it's just interesting. Like, that's not to say there's not other non-binary individuals who are different identities. I just think it's interesting that in a lot of these spaces, there's that multiple identities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the multiple identities is,
and that's not meaning to take out anybody else's identity.
No, and I get you. The idea that we can have multiple identities, it's not an issue. I have lots of friends who are non-binary and bi, and I think some people think that's like, what? but it's actually, it is a possibility, because bisexuality is not binary. So there's that. It's not an either or. And so there are lots of ways that people can be in community. Does anybody else have any other comments? Because I think we've got another minute or so, and then well, thank you all for listening today, and coming out and being part of the community. Yeah, in many ways, people can be bi even. Martina, that is so true. Thank you everybody for coming out tonight, and I hope that you'll be around, and we will have lots of discussions throughout the day. Let's see, I want to do this quickly before we end up closing the call. I'm going to share one more screen. This is my contact info. You can jot it down if you need to. Martin Rawlings-Fein, it's mrawlings-fein at ses.gtu.edu. You can also find me at Martin Rawlings-Fein with the hyphen there at .com, just my name. And I believe, okay. Thanks so much for coming today, and I hope that oh, yes, my keeper is watermelon.